It is a story that strangely lacks a beginning. Some are shouting vague, others are screaming hot air, and yet others are decreeing false. But there is some consensus around the first line of the story that goes, once upon a time, there was a barrier. Beyond that barrier, we assess all the 8 corners of the saga around former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Okengo Matiang'i, whose home was supposedly visited last night by people not known to the DCI director, not known to the Director of Public Prosecutions, or even the Interior Cabinet Secretary, among others. But the list and identity of visitors to an early morning State House breakfast meeting earlier this week is not in contestation. 9 members of Parliament from Raila Odinga's ODM party visited President William Ruto for a breakfast meeting whose aftershocks were felt 3 days later at Stony Athi, some 53.9 kilometers south of State House, Nairobi. We assess the impact of 2 breakfasts that have seen the opposition cry out that someone is after their lunch. On My Take tonight, I spill the contents of 2 payslips, one for an ECD teacher and one for a member of Parliament. Gachuri's punchline anticipates the tone and manner of Parliament when MPs resume sittings on Tuesday. Jamila's memo is addressed to the Ministry of Education as it grapples with the CBC transition. And on Kaikai's kicker, where are the brothers keepers in the Said Chitembwe's disgraceful fall? This is Newsgang.
Our preliminary findings have uncovered evidence of a well-coordinated and deliberate attempt to spread false information and incite public fear. Unfortunately, spearheaded by a person of the standing of a former Interior Security Cabinet Secretary. I can confirm that the DCI is indeed investigating several cases, but I can confirm that none of the cases under investigation so far have reached the stage which requires the assistance or attendance of Dr. Fred Matiang'i.
The attempted arrest of the CS was a witch hunt, was in bad faith, and in any event, due process ought to be followed. There were no summons, there were no warrants to conduct a search at his place. Neither was he ever called to any institution to render any information that he knows which came into his possession while executing the duties and calling of his office.
A claim that the CS should provide CCTV footage of the people who were there. Whose responsibility is it? It can never be shifted, the burden that prove that the people who are there were police officers. And the police officers, when operating outside the law, they will never be in uniform. They will never come in police registered vehicles.
What a night it was last night. Probably about 24 hours since that report or the claims were made. And so that is where we begin tonight. Ladies, gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to Newsgang. And we invite you to send in your feedback. The hashtag is Newsgang at Citizen TV Kenya. Francis, many questions abound from the events that took place or were said to have taken place 24 hours ago at the residence of the former Interior CS.
Both sides cannot be telling the truth. At least one is telling the truth and the other is not. And I say this because was there a raid or was there no raid? The DCI, the ESCC, DPP, the minister in charge of national security say nothing of the sort happened. On the other hand, the ODM leader, who is also the Azimio leader, says there was a raid. Actually, they have come to assist the former CS. And we saw quite a number of lawyers and another group of members of parliament. So it's a very convoluted kind of a situation. But I think the discussion is so much more about if there was a raid, what was the intention? If there was no raid, what was the intention of the outcry? But what, in my opinion, sums this up is what the DCI is saying, that yes, there is an investigation that is going on, but it hasn't gotten to a stage that requires the invitation or the arrest of the former CS. I thought that was the biggest discussion around it, that something is happening. Could it be that maybe the former CS got information because realized that he was the person in charge of the national security, and it's been a few months since he was away from office? That tells you that he still has a few people who he worked with and probably would have some information in one way or another that maybe would give him some information about some investigation that is going on or something of the sort. So maybe that could have been the situation, and probably to preempt such an arrest or preempt such as such could have been the reason why the call was made, or the outcry was. But be it as it may, it goes to tell you that certainly Matiang'i is not out of the woods, and so maybe a number of cabinet secretaries who he served with in the former administration. I also wouldn't be surprised if similar things happen to the former DCI, George Kinoti, because there are quite a number of things that were said about Matiang'i, about Dr. Kibicho, about Kinoti, about Mutiambai prior to the election or during the period of the election. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of revisiting with the new administration. Because, put it this way, unfortunately, this is the worst thing to say, that maybe the shoe is on the other foot, unfortunately. That goes to tell you the nature of our politics. The administration that is in power can use state security apparatus in one way or another, and when you are out of that power, when you are out of government, the same is likely to be used against you, which unfortunately should not be the case, because you would expect that our security officers would be led by the law and order.
Indeed, and the reactions have been swift, right?
Yes, they've been swift, and as Gachuri said, they've come from the heads of all the security departments, from the CS Interior to the Inspector General to the DCI boss to a statement that was released by the Inspector General, saying that nothing of the sort happened. They said it's false that no police officer or any member of any other unit within the security force went to Matiang'i's home last evening. So what really happened? That's what everybody is asking. Something must have happened for there to have been the leader of Azimio there, for his lawyers to be there. Of course, media were called and they were there. So what really happened? No one really knows what happened. I was looking at a statement that was made by one of his lawyers, and he said, well, they had received information from around 2 p.m. that there was something that was going to happen, but they didn't really know what this something was that was going to happen. And then, Yvonne, what makes it interesting is the statement by the DCI boss, Mohammed Amin, who said that the preliminary findings, and I'm quoting him, have uncovered evidence of a well-coordinated and deliberate attempt to spread false information and incite public fear, unfortunately spearheaded by a person of the standing of a former Interior Security Cabinet Secretary, saying, "Hii ilipangwa." And then, of course, we see early this morning the development where his lawyers, Fred Matiang'i's lawyers, go to court seeking anticipatory bail. I think we had heard the soundbite there of Dunstan Omari when the show was starting, talking about it, saying that they're going to court to try and stop him from being arrested. And I think this evening the judge did issue the anticipatory bail worth 200,000 shillings. But I think before we continue, I wanted us to listen to the DPP talking about affidavit by Matiang'i's force, and then we can continue.
In fact, I have looked at his application in court, and he has alleged that me and the president met on the sideline to plan in Mombasa when we had the African Prosecutors Association, to plan against him. That in itself is a perjury, and I will take him to task. I will take that affidavit to task because it's unacceptable. Let him table that evidence that we did that.
The DPP is talking about what is in the affidavit that was filed in court when Matiang'i was seeking the anticipatory bail. Remember, he sued 6 national government institutions, including the DCI, the Inspector General, the National Police Service, the DPP, the EACC, IPOA, and the National Police Service Commission are also in it. And he has also put in the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights and the Law Society of Kenya as interested parties. Now, what is the DPP talking about? According to the affidavit, he says that there was a plan to arrest him.
Yeah. That the plot was was hatched.
Was hatched in Mombasa.
Yes.
Remember, the DPP was in Mombasa at a meeting, I think, of the
African Prosecutors Association.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And the president was there, and he says that is where it was planned between the president and the DPP, and he says that's what he wants to sue Matiang'i about. But then I was reading about the affidavit itself, Yvonne, if you'll allow me, and he says between February 6th and 9th, he received credible information from several reliable sources and officers of the Kenya Police that there was a scheme to arbitrarily capture and arrest him with a view of arraigning him in court for ulterior political motives on trumped-up charges. That and a lot more has been said, him saying that he's at loss. While he was minister, he was never arrested for anything, so he doesn't understand why police officers are seeking to arrest him, and he was alluding to the EACC. So we have all this happening, and of course he's gotten his anticipatory bail. Of course the judge has fixed the case to be heard on February 23rd, but still there is no clarity really, Yvonne, about what happened, other than the denials and his claims. Yeah. What really happened last night? Was there any police at his home trying to arrest him? What happened?
Or if indeed he is under any type or form of investigation, which when Sam Gituku spoke to the DPP earlier on today, one of the biggest scandals that has been associated with the former Interior CS is that of the Ruaraka land scam, which is, I think, to the tune of $1 billion shillings. And so I'd like us to listen to the DPP just talking about that. And maybe that's where you start to see, because the DCI also said, there is an investigation, but we haven't gotten to the point where we need him to make a statement. But the DPP also talked about that case and the status of the investigation and whether indeed, if Matiang'i is under investigation for that Ruaraka land scam. Let's listen to DPP saying, if there's anything on the Ruaraka land scam, we will pursue. Let's listen.
For a long time, it's the media that has been even asking about the Ruaraka land issue. And once the file is ready, I think we will make the decision and we will inform the public what the decision will be. We are awaiting finalization of the financial investigations. Once that is ready, then we'll make the appropriate decisions.
So, but yet in the cloud of all of that, is he under investigation? Is he not? Is he required to make a statement or not? Those are the reactions, ladies and gentlemen, that we saw, from the security and the investigative agencies. But then there was also plenty of reaction from the political front. Linus, this is also emerging to be a political question.
Absolutely, and it's all down to the general context of the country at the moment. And for those who are reading politics as a first instance, they will, of course, quote and refer to the environment. What is it like at the moment? And you remember just a few days ago, the biggest issue in the news was the reduction or rationalization of security for former President Uhuru Kenyatta. And there was also mention of the Matiang'is, Kibichos, as people who were affected by the rationalization of the security. And then again, if you read our politics, this is becoming a ritual, a post-election ritual. If you remember, this night about 5 years ago, all television stations were off air. Were off air. Actually, today is 5th of, today's 9th of February. We were off air, courtesy of Fred Matiang'i, who was then the Interior Cabinet Secretary, who, after the controversial swearing in of Raila to Uhuru Park on the 29th of January, then decided that television stations should not be on. And what we are seeing is that kind of pattern. Right now, we're going to wait on the word of the DCI director, who said he's investigating this matter. And going by tradition, it's very unlikely that there'll be a day he'll call a press conference and tell you, by the way, this is what had gone on at Matiang'i's home.
And we are prosecuting so-and-so for telling a lie.
Yes, don't wait on that. It might take time. It may never come. So was Matiang'i's apprehension informed by a culture he's very much understood? He himself was in charge at Interior when they were breaking, when police officers dressed in civilian wear, some in jackets and looking actually thuggish, broke the door of the home of Miguna.
Right.
And then spirited him away, put him in different vehicles to Kajiado, to many places basically. There's that culture, and that is what doesn't give trust when it comes to listening to some of these press conferences. Because is it possible to abuse the police service? Yes, it's been possible. In every election, police actually turn into a mini militia that does certain duties pre-election and certain even dirty assignments post-election. You just need to look at 2017, the raid on the house of Miguna, the raid on the house of
David Lee.
Of Jimmy Wanjigi.
David Lee was also spirited from his home and taken,
yes.
Was it all the way to Lamu? Yes, and then brought to Nairobi.
Yes.
Ndindi Nyoro, Kimani Ichung'wah, yeah. The list is endless.
The list is endless. And don't forget Malala as well.
Oh, yes, that's right.
He doesn't like those Subarus.
That's right.
And this is the culture. Yeah. This is the culture that if it's not dealt with, and I think this must have been what the then Deputy President was referring to, and I want us to listen to now President Ruto, then Deputy President Ruto speaking at the Bomas about the shoe being on the other foot.
Of the police. And I want to ask you, we must be careful on where we are going. Today, you may have the latitude to do what you think will be right as per you. Tomorrow, the shoe will be on the other leg.
Yes, and I just want us to, together with this, listen to Matiang'i when he was speaking about anticipatory bail, which tonight he is a beneficiary. Let's listen to Matiang'i in 2020? This was Bomas, yes.
Yes.
Matiang'i.
And look, you are the security committee. If Bonyeti receives an anticipatory order, you prepare to commit a crime, then you go to court and come up with an anticipatory order. We are hearing it's an innovation in Kenya's judicial system, an anticipatory order. So you can't be arrested. So you go, get the order, and arrive here, and go and break into Honorable Mujiri's house. You have an order. You anticipated that you're going to make a mistake. You cannot be arrested.
Look at that. And quite frankly, I don't think there's a more delusional office in public service than the Ministry of Interior, which used to be the ministry, the office of the president in charge of provincial administration and national security. Very powerful ministry. Very, very powerful ministry. And those who come to those office, and you saw the former CS speaking about anticipatory bail in a way that actually bad-mouthing it as a bad idea, that, people are misusing this.
But yet
tonight, he is relying on anticipatory bail to be free from any arrest, even if there is something that the DCI was, for example, following. Right now, courtesy of the anticipatory bail, he won't be touched unless you go to...
Does it last, the anticipatory bail?
It's actually normally specified. I've not read the Matiang'i one, but he's paid 200,000 shillings, and he cannot be arrested.
Can be investigated though, but can't be arrested.
He can be investigated, but he cannot be arrested. This basically stops people from going to his house.
Okay.
You can't go there and say, now you want to arrest him because there's a court order now protecting him. Hey, I was a beneficiary.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah, you're a beneficiary.
Courtesy
You're a
of Fred
beneficiary of
Matiang'i.
anticipatory bail, yes.
Courtesy of Fred Matiang'i again, we were beneficiaries of anticipatory bail in 2018,
yes.
2018 February.
Around this time.
Around this time. It's exactly around this time, 5 years ago. And because we don't wear the same shoes, but that was something we had to deal with. Myself, my colleagues, Larry Madowo
and Ken
Mijungu. Because we received very credible information that the policemen who were at the time camping at Miguna's and Jimmy Wanjigi's, they are transporting David Ndiolova, were also targeting us. And we got this very credible information. And today I was having an interesting conversation with somebody who was asking, where were the people that went to Matiang'i's house? And this is a colleague, and I asked him, okay, how about the people who are supposed to arrest myself, Larry, and Ken? And Ken. The proof was in walking out of Nation Center.
Yeah.
If you want those photos, it required us to walk out there and actually get ourselves arrested. Of course, starting with the lightest, who was Larry Madowo.
Yeah. We were witnesses, Yvonne. We were witnesses.
Right?
Yeah.
How many nights of long knives?
Several.
Yeah, quite a few. I mean, and so that just goes to give context and history and perspective around, this particular issue and how things typically go in this country. And like you said, Linus, it typically happens after an election, new regime change, and, when the shoe now is typically on the other foot. Before we take a break, I want us to just listen to two bites, two sound clips back to back, because now the shoe is on the other foot. Kimani Ichung'wah, the majority leader in the National Assembly, weighing in on the matter. And also because the shoe is on the other foot now, former CS Eugene Wamalwa says he and several others are also targets. Watch.
To CS, former CS Matiang'i, we know you're afraid. We know the guilty are always afraid. But we want to tell you this government will not act as carelessly and as irresponsibly and abusing power as you did when you were in office. Whatever you are afraid of, and you know the things you did when you were in office, just patiently wait for the law to catch up with you. And if anybody wants to arrest you, it will not be done in the wee hours of the night. You will not have to stage any drama. It will simply be the law catching up with you.
And Baba, we must really thank you for being there for him. In fact, I want, after we finish, I want you to know my house in case it happens to me also, please. Because I'm told there's a list. Those of us who are ministers in Uhuru's government, who are close to Uhuru, they are not just targeting Uhuru, they are targeting us as well.
Yeah.
Really, the more things change, the more they stay the same?
Absolutely. And you see, this is the tragedy of our institutions. If you commit a crime, then the law should take its course. The security apparatus should not be used to harass, intimidate or blackmail one team or the other. Then and now. Back then, is it true that security officers were used for political reasons? Absolutely. And particularly in the last administration, the second term of President Uhuru Kenyatta, we saw quite a number of that. We also saw a bit of it, what was christened Kamata Kamata Fridays. You remember that discussion? A good number of those cases that were dealt with through the Kamata Kamata Friday process, quite a number of them, actually nearly all of them, did not materialize, did not make any progress, so to say. So that goes to tell you that it is very possible to use our national security apparatus for the wrong reasons. And while at it, you can imagine the roles and functions of our security officers are very clearly defined. If somebody has committed a crime, then there should be a process, a way of dealing with them. Is Eugene Wamalwa genuine in his apprehension? Probably he is. Maybe they know a few things. I wouldn't be surprised if a number of CSAs who were in the previous administration, a number of senior officials who were in the previous administration, cited for one reason or the other. Because it is not very easy to finish a term of 5 years without a skeleton or two in your closet. And fortunately or unfortunately, once you exit office, and especially probably in an acrimonious manner like the previous administration did, your closet will be opened and a skeleton here and a skeleton there will be unleashed.
Right.
And so that will be used as a very good opportunity to pursue. Maybe a bit of revenge, yes. Maybe a bit of the shoe being on the other foot, yes. But the totality of it is what you saw happening in the previous administration is also happening or likely to happen in this administration. The unfortunate thing is that Dr. Fred Matiang'i has his fair share of a bit of being overbearing and a bit of misuse of that security apparatus when he was in office. And there are those who are celebrating that, hey, you also deserve it. But I don't think that is the right way to go about it, because an elective office or an appointive office has a shelf life, has a timeline. So no one will stay in that public office forever. So the celebration today may be a mourning tomorrow. If you misuse power today, it probably can be misused against you tomorrow. That does not help our country in one way or another.
Reminds me
I think,
oh, sorry.
I think what should really worry us is how the functioning or lack of our security apparatus is so regime specific. Why should there be skeletons in a closet only after CS has left? When was the last time cabinet secretaries or ministers were actually held accountable for their actions while they're still in office? I think the last time, if we go by, there was 2015, the list of shame in Parliament.
And I think there was only one, the CS for roads. And it was so artificial because they all ended up, almost the entire bunch nearly came up to cabinet. When Mwai Kibaki was president, he got rid of his friends, including David Muraria, George Saitoti and Kiraitu Murungi, and actually announced in a press conference that he has accepted their resignations. We later established that they actually not resignation. He accepted that nevertheless. And then and then they went through due process. We all remember that David Muraria unfortunately went through his court case all the way to his hospital, to his death, to a hospital bed. That was the last time. Now, here we are, where raids happen after elections. Because now you're out of office. And when you look at the Matiang'i issue of Ruaraka land case, it started way back when he was CS in charge of education. That has never been dealt with. It's been going on and off. Comes up and,
And what we see the politicians doing is they use information they have about each other to hold each other hostage. That if you do this, we'll bring it up. And that is the context within which any cases against any of the Uhuru cabinet members will be seen as. They'll be seen as, oh, you are now getting back at us, which is wrong. This is an indictment of the justice, criminal justice system. And we are watching also a DPP that has basically become a wind vane. That, okay, there's change here. And he even verbalizes that there is a new regime.
Did say today is happier.
Today is happier. That's not how he's supposed to function. His term is a fixed term of
7 years.
Is it 8? Yes.
7. 6 years of DPP, which is secured under the Constitution completely. And it's irrespective of
He's supposed to be regime blind, completely regime blind. But here is a DPP who has basically become a transition commentator. This regime is doing this, now I'm happier, I'm functioning better. This is a tragedy at the DPP's office because it's being a very regime-specific office that is saying Now we are functioning well. We were not functioning well before this. Oh, we saw him saying that there was a lot of interference under President Uhuru Kenyatta. What if this also is put as an accusation that now he's taking new instructions? Yeah.
Indeed. Let's take that break. Jamila, I know you want to say something.
It's okay, 20 break.
Let's take the break. When we come back, we'll have you weigh in. And then we will also talk about politics. It was breakfast and lunch